3 years ago, I stood in the doorway of our apartment watching Sienna walk out, her heels clicking against the hardwood like gunfire in my chest. She didn't even turn back, just tossed her hair, and said I was too safe, too small for her. I remember the sting of it, how her words cut deeper than the divorce papers that showed up a week later. She thought I'd crumble, that I'd stay the broke dreamer she'd married, the guy with a laptop and a shaky business plan. She was wrong. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall, feeling the weight of her leaving settle into my bones. But something else woke up inside me, something hard, something hungry. I wasn't going to let her win. Not like that. The next morning, I started building. Not with bricks or steel, but with every ounce of pain she'd left behind. I called it Wolf's Strategic Capital because it sounded fierce, like the man I needed to become. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by coffee and spite, turning my little investment idea into something real. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my old college buddies. I just kept my head down, making calls, shaking hands, signing deals. Sienna moved on fast, of course. She married Grant Ellison, this loudmouth property developer with a trust fund and a grin that screamed money. I saw the wedding photos online, her in white, him in some overpriced suit, both of them laughing like they'd hit the jackpot. She thought she'd traded up, left me in the dust. I didn't care. I was too busy stacking wins she'd never see coming. It took 3 years, but I did it. Wolf's Strategic Capital grew into something massive, $200 billion under management, deals in real estate, tech, private equity. I didn't flaunt it. No magazine covers, no big parties. Just quiet moves, the kind that make waves without a sound. I hired Betrayal Carson as my COO. She's tough, loyal, the kind of person who'd run through a wall for me. Miles Thorne, my legal guy, came on board too, a shark in a suit who could fix any mess I threw at him. Together, we turned my herd into an empire. Sienna didn't know. Grant didn't know. Nobody did. I liked it that way, watching from the shadows, knowing I wasn't the man she left anymore. I heard whispers about her life with Grant. Fancy cars, big houses, all that shiny stuff she'd always wanted. She thought she'd escaped me, escaped the small life I'd offered. I didn't bother keeping tabs, it didn't matter. I was too focused on what I was building, on proving her wrong in ways she'd never expect. Every late night, every deal closed, every zero added to my balance sheet, it was for me, not her. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a spark of satisfaction knowing she'd picked the wrong horse. Grant was loud money, inherited and sloppy. I was quiet power, earned and sharp. She'd see that one day. I didn't know when or how, but I knew it was coming. The thing about storms is they don't announce themselves. They just roll in, dark and heavy, and by the time you notice, it's too late. That's what I became, a storm she didn't see brewing. 3 years ago, I was broken, sure. But defeated? Never. I took every piece she shattered and built something she couldn't touch. Wolf Strategic wasn't just a company, it was my answer, my proof. Sienna walked out on a man who was still finding his footing. She had no idea she'd left behind someone who'd learned to fly. And soon, she'd find out just how high I'd climbed. I wasn't chasing her anymore. I was waiting for the moment she'd realize what she'd thrown away. It was closer than I thought. I don't talk much about how Wolf's Strategic Capital became what it is today, mostly because I don't like the spotlight. 3 years back, after Sienna walked out, I decided to go silent, not just with her, but with everyone. No interviews, no big speeches, no showing off. Just me, my laptop, and a fire in my gut that wouldn't quit. I'd sit in my tiny office, back when it was just a rented room with bad lighting, and map out every move. Real estate deals here, tech startups there, private equity to tie it all together. I didn't care about sleep or weekends. I cared about winning, about building something so big no one could ignore it, even if I kept it quiet. That's how it started, one brick at a time, laid with sweat and a whole lot of stubbornness. Betrayal came on board early. She's a force, smart, direct, the kind of woman who doesn't blink when the stakes get high. I met her at a networking event I almost skipped, and she saw something in me I didn't even see myself. "You've got vision, Adrian," she said over cheap coffee. "Let me help you make it real." She did. She handled operations, kept the chaos in line while I chased the big ideas. Then there's Miles, my legal fixer. He's a quiet guy until you need him, then he's a bulldog with a briefcase. Between the three of us, we turned Wolf Strategic into a machine, smooth, sharp, unstoppable. We didn't shout about it. We just worked. And it grew. Fast. By last year, we were sitting on $200 billion in assets. I still can't say that number out loud without feeling a little dizzy. But the real prize was coming, Project Halcyon. It's my baby, a $30 billion portfolio, luxury real estate in cities like New York, London, Dubai. High-end condos, hotels, office towers, all tied together with Wolf Strategic's name on it. I wanted it to be perfect, a statement to the world that I'd made it. The catch? We needed a listing partner, a brokerage to handle the real estate side, open houses, sales, all that front-facing stuff I don't have time for. I told Brielle to find someone good. Top tier only, I said. I don't care who, just make it work. She nodded, got on it. I trusted her. I didn't think twice about it. Sienna's name never crossed my mind, not once. I spent most days in the office, staring at spreadsheets or meeting investors over steak lunches. The team knew I liked things low-key. No press releases, no hype. Just results. Halcyon was going to be huge, but I wasn't ready to let the world know yet. I'd walk around in jeans and a plain shirt, keeping my head down, blending in. People didn't recognize me as Adrian Wolf, the guy behind the billions. I liked that. It gave me room to think, to plan. Brielle would tease me sometimes, saying, "You're a ghost, Adrian. One day they'll figure you out." I'd just shrug. Let them figure it out when it's too late to matter. That's how I wanted it, control without the noise. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the details. Brielle's team was scouting firms, narrowing down the list. They picked a local outfit with a strong track record, sharp agents, big sales numbers. I didn't ask questions. I was too busy signing off on Halcyon's next phase, dreaming about glass towers and skyline views. The open house got scheduled, a penthouse we'd bought through a shell company, one of our test properties. Brielle said it'd be a good chance to see the brokerage in action. "You should go," she told me. "Check them out yourself." I wasn't planning to, but the day came, and I had an hour free. So I threw on an old jacket, skipped the tie, and went. Incognito, I thought. Just another guy walking in. I had no idea what I was stepping into, no clue that Sienna and her new life were waiting on the other side of those glass doors. If I'd known, maybe I'd have stayed away. Or maybe not. Maybe I was ready for it, even then. I wasn't planning to go to the open house that day, honestly. I almost forgot about it. My assistant, Tara, had slotted it into my calendar weeks ago, some last-minute thing Brielle insisted I check out. "It's one of our properties," she'd said over the phone. "The brokerage we're eyeing for Halcyon is hosting. Just pop in, see how they handle it." I grumbled about it, but she was right. I needed to know who we were trusting with a $30 billion project. So I agreed, half-hearted, figuring I'd slip in and out unnoticed. I didn't dress up for it. No suit, no polished shoes. Just a faded jacket, rolled-up sleeves, and a pair of jeans I'd worn too many times. I looked more like a guy delivering pizza than the head of Wolf Strategic Capital. That was the point. I wanted to watch, not be watched. The property was a penthouse, one of our shell acquisitions, bought under a dummy name to keep things quiet. It sat high above the city, all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed money without saying a word. I pulled up in my old truck, not the sleek cars I could have driven, and parked a block away. No one needed to know who I was. I walked up to the building, hands in my pockets, feeling the late afternoon sun on my face. The lobby was buzzing agents in sharp suits, buyers with expensive watches, a hum of excitement. I flashed a quick nod at the doorman, who barely glanced at me, and took the elevator to the top floor. The doors slid open, and I stepped out into a world I'd built but didn't live in. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view that could steal your breath. It was perfect. My chest swelled a little, knowing this was mine. Then I saw her. Sienna. She was standing near the kitchen island, holding a clipboard, her hair pulled back, just so, her voice carrying that polished tone she'd always used to charm people. She wore a navy blazer and heels that clicked with every step, looking every bit the real estate agent she'd become. I froze mid-stride, my heart slamming against my ribs. 3 years since I'd last seen her, and there she was, right in front of me, smiling at some couple like she owned the place. I didn't know she'd gone into this business, didn't know she'd be here. How could I? I'd stopped keeping track of her life the day she signed the divorce papers. But there she was, alive and real, and suddenly the room felt too small. Next to her stood Grant. I'd have known that smug face anywhere, even without the gaudy gold watch and the suit that screamed, "Look at me." He was laughing too loud, clapping some guy on the back, acting like the king of the penthouse. My stomach twisted. I hadn't seen him in person since the wedding photos, those stupid, glossy shots I'd scrolled past late one night. But he hadn't changed. Same cocky grin, same over-the-top energy. They were a pair, Sienna and Grant, all flash and confidence, working the room like they'd mastered the game. I stood there, unnoticed, my hands clenching in my pockets. They didn't recognize me. Not like this, not dressed down and quiet. To them, I was just some nobody who'd wandered in too early. I took a step closer, blending into the edge of the crowd, watching them. Sienna handed out business cards, her smile tight and professional. Grant kept talking, his voice grating on my nerves, tossing out lines about prime real estate and exclusive opportunities. I wondered if they even knew whose property this was, whose money had bought it. Probably not. Wolf Strategic kept things layered, hidden behind shells and proxies. That was my style, power without the parade. I could have walked away right then, called Brielle, told her to ditch this firm and find another. But something kept me there. Maybe curiosity, maybe the old ache I hadn't buried as deep as I thought. I wanted to see what they'd do, how they'd play this out. The air smelled like expensive cologne and fresh paint, and I leaned against a wall, pretending to. I stood there, leaning against the wall of the penthouse, watching Sienna glide through the crowd like she was born for this. Her voice cut through the chatter, smooth and rehearsed, pitching the place as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Grant hovered nearby, his laugh booming over the soft jazz playing in the background. I kept my head low, my jacket zipped up, blending into the shadows of the room. The agents and buyers milling around didn't give me a second glance. Why would they? I looked like I didn't belong, not in this world of tailored suits and champagne flutes. That was fine by me. I wasn't here to impress anyone. I just wanted to see if this brokerage, Sienna's brokerage, could handle Project Halcyon. So far, they seemed slick enough, but I wasn't sold. Then she saw me. Sienna's eyes flicked my way, just for a second, as she handed a glossy brochure to some guy in a tie. Her smile didn't falter, but I caught the little crease in her brow like she was trying to place me but couldn't. I hadn't changed that much in 3 years, had I? Same dark hair, same broad shoulders. But the way I carried myself now, quiet and rough around the edges, wasn't the Adrian she'd known. She turned back to her client, brushing it off, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Grant noticed me next. He was closer, swaggering over with a couple of agents trailing him, his gold cufflinks catching the light. He stopped a few feet away, sizing me up like I was a stray dog that had wandered in. "You must be the cleaner," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "Poor you." His grin was wide, his tone dripping with pity and amusement. A few agents chuckled nervously, their eyes darting between us. Sienna turned at the sound, her clipboard clutched tight, and I saw her lips twitch, like she wasn't sure whether to laugh or hush him. Grant didn't care. He rocked back on his heels, waiting for me to shrink, to mumble something and slink away. I didn't move. I didn't say a word at first. I just looked at him, letting the silence stretch, feeling the weight of every eye in the room settle on me. My pulse thumped steady in my ears, but my face stayed calm, ice calm. I took a step forward, slow and deliberate, and watched his grin falter just a little. "Then our $30 billion deal is off now," I said. My voice was low, even, cutting through the air like a blade. The room went dead quiet. Phones slipped from hands, clattering on the marble. Sienna's clipboard froze mid-air, her eyes wide, her mouth parting like she'd forgotten how to breathe. Grant's face drained of color, his laugh dying in his throat. He stared at me, blinking fast, like he'd been hit with something heavy and didn't know why. I held their gaze, first his, then hers, letting the words sink in. "You should have checked who you were mocking," I added, my tone still flat, still cold. Then I turned, my boots scuffing the floor, and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard a gasp, "Sienna, maybe," and the shuffle of feet as people tried to process what just happened. Grant stammered something. "A week. Wait. What?" That didn't even reach me. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. The elevator dinged as I stepped inside, and when the doors slid shut, I leaned against the wall, exhaling hard. My hand shook a little, not from nerves, but from the rush of it. I hadn't planned to say that, not out loud, not like that. But the second he opened his mouth, the second he tried to make me small again, it came out. 3 years of building, of proving myself, and there it was, laid bare in front of them. They didn't know who I was until that moment. Now they'd never forget. The ride down felt longer than it should have. I stared at my reflection in the polished steel, seeing a man I barely recognized, harder, sharper, someone who didn't flinch. I just tanked a potential partnership, sure, but it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a line drawn, a wall I put up between me and them. Sienna thought she'd left me behind. Grant thought he could step on me. They were wrong, and now they knew it. I stepped out into the lobby, the city noise hitting me as I pushed through the glass doors. My phone buzzed, Brielle, probably, wondering why I hadn't checked in. I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed a minute to let it settle, to feel the weight of what I'd done. The storm I'd been building for years had just broken, and this was only the start. I walked out of that penthouse with my head high, the echo of Grant's stunned "Wait, what?" still ringing in my ears. The city streets swallowed me up as I climbed into my truck, the old engine rumbling to life. My phone buzzed again, Brielle, no doubt, but I let it sit there on the passenger seat, unanswered. I needed to drive, to think, to let the adrenaline settle. I just dropped a bomb in that room, and I could still see their faces, Sienna's wide eyes, Grant's slack jaw, like a snapshot burned into my brain. I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. They'd earned that moment, and I delivered it. By the time I pulled into Wolf Strategic's parking garage, the sun was dipping low, painting the skyline orange. I grabbed my phone and headed upstairs, ready to face whatever came next. The office was buzzing when I walked in. Brielle met me at the door, her arms crossed, a grin tugging at her lips. "You couldn't keep it quiet, could you?" she said, handing me a coffee. I took it, shrugging, and followed her to the conference room. The big screen was already on, news alerts flashing across it. Mysterious billionaire CEO halts $30 billion deal over open house insult, one headline screened. Another, Wolf Strategic Capital pulls plug on Ellison Properties. I sank into a chair, sipping the coffee, letting the words wash over me. "Guess the cat's out of the penthouse now," Brielle said, leaning against the table. She was amused, hell, I was too. I hadn't meant to go public like that, but Grant's big mouth had forced my hand. My phone lit up again this time, Sienna's name on the screen. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over decline. 3 years since she'd called me, and now here she was, probably scrambling to figure out how I'd turned into this. I hit the button and tossed the phone on the table. "She'll call back," Brielle said, raising an eyebrow. "Let her," I replied. I wasn't ready to hear her voice, not yet. Downstairs, Miles was already on the phone with our legal team, drafting the official notice to pull Wolf Strategic out of any talks with Ellison Properties. "It's done," he told me when he walked in, his tie loosened. "They're out. Market's going to feel this by morning." I nodded, leaning back in my chair. Good. Let it hit them hard. By nightfall, the fallout was everywhere. Social media was a mess, people guessing who I was, what had happened, why a $30 billion deal had just evaporated. Some real estate blogger posted a blurry photo of me leaving the penthouse, captioned, "The cleaner who canceled an empire." I laughed at that one, showing it to Brielle. "Not bad," she said, scrolling through her own feed. "Grant's trending, though. Not in a good way." I pulled up X myself, seeing his name pop up in angry threads from investors and agents. "Ellison's done," one post read. "Lost my stake because of his ego." Another, "Who's this Wolf guy? Where'd he come from?" I put the phone down. They'd figure it out soon enough. Sienna called again, twice more, actually, but I didn't pick up. I could imagine her pacing some fancy office, her perfect hair coming loose, her voice shaking as she tried to explain this to Grant. He'd be yelling by now, I bet, blaming her, blaming me, blaming anyone but himself. I didn't care. Back at HQ, the team was in high gear. Miles said Grant's investors were already pulling out. 3 big names had called to jump ship within hours. "They're spooked," he told me, flipping through emails. "Word spreading you're the real deal, Adrian. They don't want to be on your bad side." I sipped my coffee, staring out the window at the city lights. I hadn't asked for this fight, but I wasn't backing down now. Brielle turned on the TV, some late-night business channel already picking up the story. A talking head in a suit was saying, "Wolf Strategic Capital's move today sent shockwaves through the industry. Ellison Properties is reeling, and no one saw this coming." I muted it, rubbing my eyes. "You good?" Brielle asked, softer this time. "Yeah," I said, meeting her gaze. "Just didn't expect it to feel like this." She in? Maybe she did. I'd spent 3 years building something unbreakable, and today I'd shown it off. Not because I wanted to, but because they'd pushed me. Sienna and Grant thought they knew me. They didn't. And now their world was cracking, while mine stood tall. The phone buzzed again. "Sienna." I let it ring. I woke up the next morning to a flood of notifications, my phone buzzing like it was alive, the screen lighting up with calls, texts, and news alerts. I rolled over in bed, the city skyline staring back at me through the window of my downtown apartment. Yesterday felt like a dream, but the headlines proved it was real. Ellison Properties loses $500 million in investor pullouts overnight. Wolf Strategic's mystery CEO shakes up real estate world. I rubbed my face, letting it sink in. I'd walked into that open house to scope out a partner, not to start a war. But Grant's smug cleaner jab had flipped a switch, and now here we were, his empire crumbling, mine rising, and the whole world watching. I got up, made coffee, and let the chaos unfold. Brielle texted me before I'd even finished my first cup. Grant's a mess. Check X. I opened the app, scrolling through the carnage. Photos of him were everywhere. One blurry shot of him screaming into his phone in a parking lot, his tie yanked loose, his face red. Ellison's done for, someone wrote. Lost my contract because of this clown. Another post tagged me. Well, Wolf Strategic, saying, whoever this guy is, he's a legend. Took down Ellison with one line. I smirked, sipping my coffee. I didn't feel like a legend. I felt like a guy who'd finally stopped taking punches. But the noise kept growing. Investors bailing, agents jumping ship, rumors flying that the SEC was sniffing around Grant's books. His world was falling apart, fast. Sienna tried something desperate that afternoon. I was at the office, going over halcyon updates with Miles, when Tara buzzed me. There's a woman downstairs, she said, her voice tight. Says she knows you. Won't leave. I didn't need to ask who. I walked to the window, peering down at the street. There she was, Sienna, standing by the entrance, arms crossed, her coat pulled tight against the wind. No fancy blazer today, just jeans and a sweater, like she'd given up the act. She's been there an hour, Tara added. I watched her for a minute, pacing back and forth, glancing up at the building. Let her stay, I said, turning away. She's not coming up. Tara nodded, and that was that. Sienna could wait all day. I wasn't opening the door. The news kept piling on. By noon, Grant's firm had lost 3 more investors, big players who'd propped up his flashy deals. Miles came in with a stack of papers, grinning like a kid on Christmas. They're toast, Adrian, he said, dropping the files on my desk. Ellison's board is panicking. Word is, they're voting to cut him loose. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Already? I asked. Yep, he said. And get this. People are saying Wolf Strategic's blacklisting anyone who works with him. No proof, but the rumor's enough. No one wants to touch him now. I didn't start that rumor, but I didn't mind it. Let them think I was ruthless, it kept the vultures away. I did one interview that day, just to set the record straight. Some business reporter caught me outside a lunch meeting, shoving a mic in my face. Mr. Wolf, why'd you pull the $30 billion deal? He asked. I kept it simple, looking straight at him. I believe in partnerships built on respect, I said. That's all I'll say. He blinked, scribbling it down, and I walked off before he could push. It aired an hour later, and Brielle texted me a clip. Smooth, boss. You're trending again. I watched it once, me in a plain jacket, voice steady, the city humming behind me. It wasn't much, but it was enough. People didn't need my life story. They just needed to know I meant what I said. By evening, Grant was a ghost online, his socials locked, his name dragged through every comment section. Sienna was still outside when I left the office, sitting on a bench now, her head in her hands. I paused by my truck, watching her from across the street. She looked small, lost, nothing like the woman who'd walked out on me 3 years ago. Part of me wanted to go over, to ask why she was here, what she thought she'd get. But I didn't. I climbed into the cab and drove off, her figure shrinking in the rearview. She'd made her choice back then. This was mine now. The city lights blurred past, and I felt the weight of it, the collapse I'd sparked, the power I held. Grant and Sienna were sinking, and I was still standing. That's all that mattered. I didn't expect to see Grant again so soon, but there he was, crashing a charity gala I'd quietly sponsored that Saturday night. I'd been roped into it by Brielle. She said it was good for Wolf Strategic's image, a chance to rub shoulders with the right people. I wasn't thrilled, but I showed up anyway, dressed in a tailored tux that felt too tight around my shoulders. The venue was all crystal chandeliers and velvet drapes, packed with CEOs, athletes, and industry big shots sipping overpriced wine. I kept to the edges, nursing a glass of whiskey, nodding at the occasional handshake. People knew my name now. The open house stunt had made sure of that, but I still didn't like the attention. I was there to write a check, not play the star. Then I saw him. Grant pushed through the crowd, his suit wrinkled, his face flushed like he'd already had a few too many. He spotted me near the bar and made a beeline, his grin forced and wobbly. "Adrian, buddy, look, we got off on the wrong foot," he said, his voice loud, his breath sharp with liquor. Heads turned, conversations dipping as people watched. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, swirling my glass, letting him ramble. It was a joke, man, you know? Just messing around. No harm meant. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, too hard, like we were old pals. I shrugged it off, meeting his eyes, wild, desperate, nothing like the cocky guy from the penthouse. I took a slow sip of my drink, letting the silence stretch. His grin faltered, sweat beading on his forehead. "You made fun of the cleaner," I said, my voice low but clear. "But I don't clean messes, I erase them." His face froze, the words hitting him like a slap. He opened his mouth, stammering something incoherent, but I didn't wait for it. I turned away, nodding at a security guy nearby. "Get him out," I said, calm as anything. Two guards moved in fast, grabbing Grant's arms as he sputtered, wait, come on, Adrian." They hauled him toward the exit, his protest fading into the hum of the room. People stared, whispering, but I just finished my drink and set the glass down. Done. I caught a glimpse of Sienna then, across the ballroom. She was standing by a pillar, half hidden in the shadows, her face pale as she watched Grant get dragged out. She didn't move, didn't come closer, just stood there, clutching a glass of wine she wasn't drinking. Our eyes met for a second, and I saw it, the realization sinking in, the life she'd built cracking under her feet. She looked away first, her shoulders slumping, and I turned back to the bar. I didn't need to say anything. She knew. The gala carried on, laughter, clinking glasses, deals being made in quiet corners. But for me, it was over. I'd seen enough. The next day, the papers had a field day. Ellison ejected from gala after pleading with Wolf CEO, one headline read. Betrayal sent me the link with a laughing emoji. "He's digging his own grave," she wrote. I didn't reply, just scrolled through the story, skimming the details. Grant's investors were gone now, his board meeting in secret, his name a punchline. Sienna hadn't called again since camping out at HQ, but I figured she was watching it all fall apart too. I spent the morning at the office, going over halcyon plans with Miles. "New firms ready to step in," he said, sliding a contract across my desk. "Better terms, cleaner rep." I signed it without a second thought. Ellison Properties was history. I kept picturing Grant's face, how it twisted when I shut him down, how he thought he could charm his way back. 3 years ago, I might have let it slide, might have been the guy who laughed it off and moved on. Not anymore. I'd built Wolf Strategic to stand for something, and I wasn't bending for anyone, especially not him. Sienna, too, she'd picked him, picked that life, and now she was stuck watching it burn. I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel much at all, just a quiet, steady hum in my chest. The gala had been her last chance to see me as the man she'd left, weak and small. Instead, she saw who I'd become. And Grant? He'd learned I don't bluff. The city kept turning outside my window, and I kept building step by step, brick by brick, leaving them behind. I didn't expect Sienna to try again, not after the gala, but she did. It was a gray Tuesday morning, rain streaking the windows of my office, when Tara buzzed me. "She's back," she said, her voice flat. "Wants to meet somewhere neutral. Says it's urgent." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Sienna had guts, I'd give her that. After days of silence, after watching Grant crash and burn, here she was, clawing for a lifeline. I could have said no, let her drown in the mess she'd made. But something, curiosity, maybe, made me agree. "Fine," I told Tara. "Tell her the cafe on 5th. 1 hour." I hung up, grabbed my coat, and headed out. I wanted to hear what she had to say, even if I already knew I wouldn't like it. The cafe was quiet when I got there, just a few people hunched over laptops and coffee mugs. I picked a table in the corner, ordered a black coffee, and waited. The rain tapped against the glass, steady and dull, matching the thud in my chest. I hadn't sat across from Sienna in 3 years, not since she'd packed her bags and told me I'd never be enough. Now she was coming to me, and I wasn't sure what I'd see in her face. Regret? Anger? Desperation? The door chimed, and there she was, walking in slow, her hair damp, no makeup, no jewelry. She looked smaller than I remembered, stripped down, like the shine she'd always worn had washed away. She spotted me, hesitated, then slid into the chair across from me. Adrian, she started, her voice soft, shaky. Thanks for meeting me. I nodded, sipping my coffee, saying nothing. She fidgeted with her hands, her nails chipped, her eyes darting to the table and back. I messed up, she said finally, the words spilling out fast. I left the wrong man. I froze, my cup halfway to my mouth. She kept going, her voice cracking. I thought Grant was everything. Success, security. But he's falling apart, and I see it now. You're the one who made it. I was wrong, Adrian. I was so wrong. She looked at me then, really looked at me, her eyes wet and pleading. I set the cup down, slow, letting her words hang there. I didn't say anything at first, just watched her, letting her squirm. She'd rehearsed this, I could tell, but it still sounded raw, like she'd been carrying it for days. I know I hurt you, she said, leaning forward. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking, please. Give me a chance. A job, maybe, at Wolf Strategic. Or us. I'd do anything to fix this. Her hands reached out, stopping short of mine, trembling. I leaned back, crossing my arms, feeling the old ache flare up and die just as fast. 3 years ago, I'd have killed to hear her say this. Now? It was just noise. You didn't leave the wrong man, Sienna, I said, my voice steady, cutting through her hope. You left before I became him. Her face crumpled, a tear slipping down her cheek, but I didn't stop. I wasn't enough for you then, I get it. You wanted more, and you picked Grant. That's on you. I built this without you, and I don't need you in it now. She blinked fast, shaking her head like she could argue her way out. Adrian, please, she whispered. I'm losing everything. Grant's gone, his company, his money. I've got nothing left. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the truth. She wasn't here for me. She was here for a parachute. I stood up, pulling out my wallet. You don't belong in my future, I said, dropping a few bills on the table, enough for her tea and mine. She stared at me, her mouth open, tears streaking her face. Adrian, she started, but I was already walking away, the cafe door swinging shut behind me. The rain hit my face as I stepped outside, cold and sharp, but I didn't mind. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and drove off, leaving her there. My chest felt tight, but not heavy, not like it used to. She'd made her play, and I'd shut it down. That was it. Back at the office, I didn't tell Brielle or Miles about it. Just got to work, signing off on Halcyon's new partnership. Sienna's words stuck with me for a while, rattling around in my head, but they didn't change anything. She'd seen me as a stepping stone once, and now she saw me as a lifeline. I wasn't either. I was Adrian Wolf, and I'd built my life without her. The rain kept falling outside, washing the city clean, and I let it take her voice with it. She was gone for good this time. I didn't hear from Sienna again after the cafe, not a call, not a text, nothing. It was like she'd finally gotten the message, or maybe she'd just run out of fight. Either way, the silence felt good, like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I threw myself back into work, letting Wolf Strategic's rhythm pull me forward. The days after that meeting blurred together. Meetings with the new Halcyon firm, late nights tweaking plans, coffee cups piling up on my desk. But the news kept me updated on Grant and Sienna, whether I wanted it or not. Their world was imploding, and I couldn't avoid the headlines screaming it from every screen and paper in the city. Ellison Properties was done, and they were going down with it. It started with Grant's company getting delisted from the stock exchange. I saw it on the TV in the office break room one morning, some analyst in a suit saying Ellison Properties couldn't weather the storm after losing Wolf Strategic's backing. Shares tanked overnight. I stood there, coffee in hand, watching the ticker scroll, zero value, trading halted. His board had voted him out the day before, a unanimous kick to the curb. Miles walked in, saw the screen, and whistled low. That's it, he said, clapping me on the back. He's officially finished. I nodded, not smiling, just taking it in. Grant's assets were frozen too, something about unpaid debts and a fraud probe. The guy who'd mocked me as a cleaner was now broke and buried. Sienna filed for divorce that same week. I found out from Brielle, who'd seen it on some gossip site. No settlement this time, she said, scrolling on her phone. She's walking away with nothing. Grant's got nothing left to give. I leaned against my desk, staring out the window at the gray skyline. I wasn't surprised. She'd hitched herself to a sinking ship, and now she was scrambling off the wreckage. I wondered where she'd go, what she'd do, but it didn't keep me up at night. She wasn't my problem anymore. The internet said she'd wiped her socials clean. No more photos of fancy dinners or beach vacations. Just gone, like she'd erased herself. Rumors floated around that she was working some low-end job downtown, maybe at a small real estate office, alone and quiet. I didn't check. I didn't care enough to. Meanwhile, Wolf Strategic kept moving. We launched Project Halcyon with the new firm, a lean outfit Grant had once laughed off as second tier. Their first open house was a hit. No mockery, no drama, just smooth sales and solid numbers. I promoted Brielle to co-president that week, handing her the reins for Halcyon's day-to-day. She deserved it. Years of loyalty, keeping me steady while I built this thing. You sure? She asked, signing the contract in my office. I'm sure, I said, grinning. You've earned it. She smiled back, rare and real, and we toasted with coffee mugs. The team cheered her on later, and I watched from the back, feeling the pieces lock into place. This was my life now, strong, steady mine. Grant faded fast after that. The last photo I saw of him was some paparazzi shot, him loading boxes into a beat-up car, his face hollow, his gold watch gone. The guy who'd strutted around that penthouse was a shell now, and I didn't feel a shred of pity. He'd built his castle on sand, and I'd kicked it down, not out of spite, but because he'd dared me to. Sienna's collapse was quieter, less public, but just as complete. She'd gambled on him, on flash over substance, and lost it all. I kept picturing her at that cafe, begging for a job, a second chance. I'd walked away then, and I wasn't looking back now. They'd both underestimated me, and this was the price. By Friday, Halcyon's first tower broke ground, a sleek, glass giant rising over the city. I drove by the site, watching cranes swing steel into place, dust kicking up in the wind. It was real, tangible, a mark I'd left that no one could erase. Grant and Sienna were footnotes now, fading into the background while I kept climbing. I pulled over, stepped out, and stood there, hands in my pockets, the noise of construction filling the air. 3 years ago, I'd been broken, left behind. Now I was here, watching my empire grow. They'd collapsed, and I hadn't, not even close. The city stretched out in front of me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt solid. This was enough. I stood on the top floor of Wolf Tower that evening, espresso in hand, the city sprawling out below me like a map I'd drawn myself. The glass walls reflected the skyline. Sharp lines of light cutting through the dusk, towers glowing against the dark. It was quiet up here, just the hum of the air system and the faint clink of my cup against the saucer. I'd come straight from the Halcyon groundbreaking, still dusty from the site, my boots leaving faint marks on the polished floor. 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined this, me, here, holding the reins of something this big. But I'd made it happen, step by step, and now it was mine. I took a sip, the bitter warmth steadying me, and let the moment settle in. Brielle walked in, her heels clicking soft against the tile. Nice view, she said, stopping beside me. She'd swapped her usual blazer for a dress from the gala, but she still carried that no-nonsense edge I'd always relied on. I nodded, not turning from the window. Better than I thought it'd be, I said. She leaned against the glass, crossing her arms, looking out with me. You did good today, she added. Halcyon's off the ground. Team's solid. Numbers are strong. I smirked a little, glancing at her. We did good, I corrected. She rolled her eyes, but didn't argue. We stood there for a minute, watching the city pulse, alive and loud even from this high up. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Sienna, not at Grant, not at the past. That fire had burned out somewhere along the way, replaced by something calmer, steadier. I'd spent so long pushing against what they'd done, proving them wrong, that I hadn't noticed when it stopped mattering. Now it was just done. I wasn't looking for revenge, I said, more to myself than her, staring at the lights below. Just peace. Brielle raised an eyebrow, her reflection sharp in the glass. Did you find it? She asked. I took another sip, letting the question hang there. No, I said finally, a small smile tugging at my lips. I built it. She laughed, short and real, nodding like she got it. Maybe she did. The past few weeks played back in my head, Grant's collapse, Sienna's plea, the way their world had caved in while mine stood tall. I didn't gloat over it. Didn't need to. They'd mocked me, underestimated me, and now they were gone, Grant a broke nobody, Sienna a Shah. I'd walked away from her at that cafe, left Grant flailing at the gala, and kept moving. Wolf Strategic was my answer, my proof, Not to them, but to myself. I set the cup down, the clink echoing in the empty room, and shoved my hands in my pockets. The city kept going, oblivious, but I felt every piece of it under my quiet command. I thought about who I was now, Adrian Wolf, the guy who'd turned pain into power. 3 years ago, I'd been lost, broken, staring at an empty apartment and a life I didn't recognize. Sienna had walked out, Grant had laughed, and I'd let it fuel me. Every late night, every deal, every risk, it had brought me here. I wasn't the man she'd left anymore, not even close. I'd shed that skin, built a new one, tougher, sharper. Standing here, looking out at what I'd made, I knew it. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I'd caught it, claimed it, and it was mine. Brielle shifted beside me, checking her phone. New firm's asking for a meeting tomorrow, she said. They're hungry, want to push Halcyon faster. I nodded, still watching the lights. Set it up, I said. Let's keep moving. She typed something, then slipped the phone back in her pocket. You ever stop? She asked, half teasing. I shrugged. Not yet. She smirked, heading for the door. Night, Adrian. She called over her shoulder. Night, I said, my voice soft in the quiet. The door clicked shut, and I was alone again, just me and the city. I stayed there a while, letting the stillness wrap around me. The espresso went cold, but I didn't mind. I felt solid, rooted, like I'd finally found my ground. Sienna and Grant were history, their echoes fading fast. Wolf Tower rose behind me, Halcyon grew below, and I stood in the middle, not bitter, not broken, just done. I knew who I was now, not the cleaner, not the ex-husband, but the man who'd built this. The city hummed on, and I watched it, steady and sure. This was my peace, my power, reclaimed and real. And I wasn't letting it go.